Good. So, are you going to reference Tafsir ibn Kathir?
No, there's a lot of them, different ones.
There's got to be Tafsir Sadi.
Yeah, well, I have more Qurtubi and so forth. But yeah, we'll talk about it. Thank you.
I think we should do something there. Oh. What we can do, hey, we can put a table here and then get a longer of this one. And put in his table.
For who, Dr. Lee? Yeah, if you want.
How you call it?
This is a USB-C to HDMI. But it might work for him. I think it's just my computer. Oh. Okay.
So last week, Selena, you didn't have a presentation? No, last week.
Oh, okay. So maybe today we do this.
But you're saying you have another one that can be longer, so we can put it in the mirror?
Yeah, but I'm looking for it. Okay, I just want to know how it looks. I don't want
to. Brother Omar, do you, or Brother Johan, do you guys see the PowerPoint slide?
Assalamu alaikum. I can hear you and I can see the PowerPoint.
Awesome. Okay. Let me get started. Yeah. All right. Sorry? I don't know. There's some online. Don't worry, I'm here. I'll protect
you.
Don't be scared.
You're my bodyguard.
They don't bite.
You're carrying a pistol. Get a man, you strap.
All right, inshallah, we'll get started. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم ينفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ينفعنا وزن علما لكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء لكل داء آمين يا رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, all of you are doing well. Apologize for this awkward setup. Just, what do we have to do to get this PowerPoint up? Just want to first of all, talk about the introduction of this class. So it's called the Promise Lost, the story of Bani Isra'il. This is something I've been trying to work on this class for a while. There's a lot of information when you start talking about and researching Bani Isra'il. Number one, because it's quite old. So there's a lot of old history. There's a lot of difference of opinion. And also, what can you rely on, what you cannot rely on? And obviously, what's going on ever since October 7th, with our brothers and sisters in Gaza, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them victory and clear their lands of the oppressors. There's a lot of talk about the promise of the Jews, or Bani Isra'il, of the land of Palestine. And were they promised this land? Were they not promised this land? What was the information about that? What does Islam have to say about that? What does obviously the Jewish religion have to say about that? So this is what kind of motivated me to go over this class and show this of the topic. Obviously, it's quite relevant to what's going on today, very, very relevant. And I think as Muslims, we might not know all our history very well in terms of where are these people coming from, what's their claim, and what's their story. And one thing is that, when you read the Quran, you see that majority of the Quran, I don't know if you want to put a certain percentage to it, but a great majority is about the Bani Isra'il. It's about Musa alayhi salam and the stories with these individuals, from Musa alayhi salam to Dawud alayhi salam to Sulaiman alayhi salam, and of course to Jesus, peace be upon him, with some other prophets in between. And so this class, honestly, alhamdulillah, one of the main reasons why we're going over, it's not just what's really happening today, what's going on in the lands of Palestine, but also because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described it so much in the Quran. So in over 30 surahs, like some scholars have mentioned, that the Quran almost became the whole story about Musa alayhi salam. There's so much information on it. So this class, inshallah, my hope, and what has benefited me a lot, is that when you start reading the Quran more, a lot of things make sense. of, oh, okay, now I know what they're talking about, especially Surah Baqarah. Okay, you could read Surah Baqarah and be kind of confused of what's actually happening in the first 10 pages. Because a lot of it talks a lot about Bani Isra'il. We have the cow story. We have a lot of different things that are going on. And how do we understand what happened to them? And where do we put that in a chronological order? We're going to go over the lessons learned from it. One thing the Prophet ﷺ said that he warned us that I'm paraphrasing the hadith, that we will take the same steps as the previous nations. And someone asked the Prophet ﷺ, what do you mean, the Christians and the Jews? He said, of course. What else do you think I mean? And so we want to make sure that the errors they made, that we don't make those same type of errors. We want to basically go over the historical events also that relates to today's genocide, what's going on with the Palestinians today. How did it lead up to where we're at right now? A lot of that, some part of that's in the Quran and Sunnah, some of it's on in history books. And so I'm not a historian, and I'm not going to go too much into the details and all the UN sanctions and the Balfour Agreement and so forth. But I'm just trying to really stick to what the Quran says and Hadith, and the rest will kind of fill in, if you will. And the main question, promised land or not? And that's one of the things that we're really going to go over, is that where they promised this land is still guaranteed to them. And if not, what happened to that promise, and what land is theirs if they even have any type of land. So we want to go over that. Okay. So what we're going to be covering, we'll be covering the start of Bani Isra'il, where do they come from? Okay. And then go into all the stories of the prophets that are mentioned in the Quran. We're not necessarily going to be talking about the prophets themselves, only when they're interacting with Bani Isra'il. So I don't really going to focus on when Musa alayhi salam got married and when he went over and he helped the ladies by the river. I'm not going to really go over those stories, but just when the prophets are dealing with the Bani Isra'il and what lessons we could turn from that. I will also kind of doing some comparison with the Torah and the Bible of, a lot of times you read these stories in the Quran and you kind of scratch your head, like, you ask, do they have the same story? If they do, like, how do they understand that? Like, don't they see that same lesson? And I'm not a scholar of the Torah or the Old Testament or the Bible in general, but I will be taking some of those passages so we can at least see what it says and kind of do a little bit of comparison, inshallah ta'ala. All right. Any questions or comments about the class? Anything that you're kind of looking for in this class that you maybe want me to cover that you don't see it on the screen here? Anybody have certain interests about what might be that you want to learn about?
Yeah, this is Brother Johan. I'm sure you covered it, but I'm really particularly interested in, because there's so much confusing information, is the really clear difference between Judaism as it still exists as a religion and Zionism.
Very good. Yes, we're going to go into that. Of course, that's many sessions down the road, but exactly the people that's currently there right now, do they have a link back to Bani Isra'il? The original Bani Isra'il, the descendants, or not? And if they're not, then do they still have that promise or that claim, or are they just making it up, or what? How do we understand that? So yes, thank you very much. I'm definitely going. Of course, those not in the Quran. That's a lot of more history and going through other different demographics and history and so forth. But we'll go over that inshallah. The other question.
Yeah, it's similar to what he mentioned, but sometimes in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions uses the word Yahud, and other times he says Bani Isra'il. So how does that relate to the situation now, and what's the difference between the two?
Very good. So she's asking about the difference between the terms of Bani Isra'il, Yahud, and so forth, which is my next slide. So alhamdulillah, we're going to answer that right now. Go ahead. Did you have a question?
Well, no, it was just more like, we're going to look at like historical documents or like historians, what they've.
Yeah, we'll bring some stuff in there. Of course, when you go into the history, a lot of it, the history is majority from Jewish and Christian resources. And so you kind of have to go there. And also what the Old Testament says, even though what I will preface, we all know very much that we believe that the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Bible in general has been changed, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. Allah tells the truth. And a lot of the documents have just plainly been lost. So we'll talk about that. That's going to be brought up later on. When it comes to after what happens with Dawood alayhi salam and so forth, and how do they take their standard of their books? And so, just a quick point to that. The first 5 books of the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, Numbers, all these different other books that are there. The first 5 of them are known as the Torah, and supposedly that's what Musa alayhi salam wrote down. according to their belief and our belief to extent. And so what's interesting though, there's parts in the books there where someone is describing Musa alayhi salam's death and how he died and what happened after his death, which is a big red flag, because how can he be writing that? Someone else is writing that. And even Jewish scholars will raise their hands and say, we admit that this was written by someone else other than Musa alayhi salam or Moses, peace be upon him. So our belief as Muslims is that we could relate from, as the Prophet said, you could relate from Bani Isra'il with no difficulty. But when it comes to something that conflicts what's in the Quran and the Sunnah, then Quran and Sunnah will obviously override that just from authentic standpoint to how we can relate where it came from and how we cannot pinpoint the source of those stories.
So I read that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given 2 opportunities to Bani Israel. Will you be
I don't know if you're referring to what's mentioned in Surah Isra, where they'll make fasad and marratain. So those, that's the one. That's the ayah. Probably be one of our last classes that we're going to go over. Is that ayah in Surah Isra, where Allah says that Bani Israel will cause corruption in the land twice, and that has been a hot topic. That verse very recently. A lot of the scholars are trying to find out when were these 2 times, and is the second time right now to what's going on today. And if it is, Allah predicts something that's going to happen right after that the believers will come back and they'll take over Masjid Aqsa and so forth. So did that already happen already? Are we living right now, or this, months away? Years away, sorry. So yes, this is definitely something we'll talk about.
Oh, even with the Torah, obviously, it was Yaqub alayhi salam who had that revelation, and then other prophets also preached with that revelation, and they also used that as their scripture. Mm-hmm. So it's are we going to talk a little bit about those prophets as well?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of UC class and next 2 or 3 sessions is almost purely tafsir. We're just reading Surah Baqarah, honestly, until we get into some other details and other prophets and so forth, and we go on where we have to take from other things. All right. So good. What's the name? First of all, we're talking about the class of Bani Isra'il. What is Bani Isra'il? What does that word even mean? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also uses other terms in the Quran, al-Yahud, alladhina hadu. Those are you could say Jewish descent. Where are these terms? Where do they come from? So the first and foremost is the word Hebrews, okay, which is one of the oldest terms that are used, especially when you go to the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. It's mentioned that Abraham is called a Hebrew. Okay, so what does the word Hebrew really mean? And what's interesting when we talk about what the terms that the Jews use or the Bani Israel use, we could almost copy and paste it what we use here in Arabic, because their language are the Semitic language, just as Arabic is a Semitic language, and the alphabet is almost the same. At least the sounding is almost very, very similar. So in Arabic, we call it Ibriyun, right? Those who are Hebrew. And some say that comes back from Ibrahim alayhi salam, from the word abara ya'buru, which means to transverse or pass, if you will. And they said that was a name that was given to these people because they used to pass. They came from the Euphrates River. They passed over the Euphrates River, as Ibrahim alayhi salam was originally from that area, and they passed also the Jordan River, also multiple different rivers, and so they got this name. The Jews in their history books, this is also where they derive that name from, Hebrews. This is also where you'll find where one of their opinions, why they got this name also. Why are they called Hebrews for? Okay, so that's one of the most popular opinion of it. There's another opinion that Ibrahim's alayhi salam's 4th grandfather had the name, a similar name to this, if you will. But even in their books, that's where this name Hebrew came from. Okay, because there are people that kind of moved around, like nomadic people. Okay, Banu Isra'il or Bani really depends. It's about Arabic grammar. When you say the word Banu or Bani, and I don't want to teach you Arabic grammar right now, but you could. Both of them are correct. Majority of the time, it's Bani. But anyhow, so the children of Israel. Where does that come from? Well, Israel is a name that was given, as we mentioned in the Quran, also the name of Yaqub alayhi salam. Okay, is a title that was given to Yaqub alayhi salam. It's an honorable title that was given to him, which means the word Isra, not the word from Surah Isra, but Isra means to someone who's an abd or a servant. And Il, anything with the Il after it in the Hebrew language, means Allah, if you would, or God. So kind of like Abdullah. So he was called the servant of God. Okay, Jibrail, Mikael, you can hear the same kind of Il at the end of it. I'm not too sure what those names mean. But this is where the Israel came from, because Yaqub alayhi salam, Banu means children or descendants. The descendants of Israel, the descendants of Yaqub alayhi salam. Okay, so this is where they start from. That is the start of this whole dialogue, is Yaqub alayhi salam as a prophet and his children. We're going to get into who his children were and the start of these individuals. That's why they call Banu Isra'il, right? Or the children of Israel. You could say the children of Yaqub alayhi salam, and you'll be totally fine. The Jews have in their book, the word Israel came from the word that means, one of their opinions, that the one who wrestled with God. It's very strange. Like, one thing I want to kind of preface this class as we're going through it. If you're going to stick with me, you're going to be scratching your head a lot and be a little confused. As some of the scholars said, when you read the stories of Bani Isra'il, you're going to hear very strange stories. Okay, obviously, worshiping, calf, being told to slaughter a calf, hitting a dead person with a part of the calf, and they come back alive. Very strange things you're going to find. It kind of makes you want to scratch your head a little bit. But you're going to hear different things. So one thing about that they believe is that Yaqub alayhi salam, or Jacob, wrestled with God for a whole entire night until he got this title of the one who wrestled with God. Right? That's one of their things. I know. How do you wrestle with God? Just put it to a side. But I just want to let you know that, because if you talk to someone who has Jewish religion and say, like, oh, it means like the servant of God, they might have this opinion, the one that wrestled with God. Because this is one of their stories in their Bible. Okay, so that's where the name of Banu Israel comes from. Yahud, where does that word come from? So one of the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam, of Jacob, peace be upon him, is Yahutha, okay, which is down there. I don't have my pointer right here. Yahutha was the fourth son of Yaqub alayhi salam. Which is translated to the word Judah, okay, where the word Jews come from, okay, and Judaism, if you will. And they became the dominant civilization. Now, you have 12 sons, okay? Not all of them are equal in power and might and so forth. And Yahutha, or Judah, is the one son where his descendants became one of the strongest, where to the point that they had their own empire at one time. So I'm fast forwarding here a little bit. I'm fast forwarding here a little bit. I think it's actually good, actually. I'm going to try it. After Dawood alayhi salam, I'm skipping a lot right here, when they have their kingdom, and then Suleiman alayhi salam comes, right? After they have their kingdom and so forth, the Jewish kingdom, or the Israel kingdom, breaks up into two parts. You have the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah, of Yahutha. Okay, the kingdom of Israel ends up being conquered, and the majority of the Jews, or the people in this kingdom, go down to the kingdom of Judah. Then this kingdom of Judah gets conquered, right? This person named Nebuchadnezzar, okay, from Babylon, comes and destroys them, and all of them get the name of after that, they all became known as Yahutha or Yahudi. Okay, the word Hutha in Arabic, or even in other languages, it's kind of hard to pronounce the tha. So even in Arabic today, you just use it as you change it to a dal, or a da, if you will. It's just easier on the tongue. Okay, so that's where the word Yahudi comes from. Okay, even the Jews, they use that word. Right here is Yehuda. They use it. They call themselves that. So that is a Hebrew term itself, right? So if you want to, like, if you're in a debate or something, and you want to, like, speak Arabic to your friend next to you and think that they don't understand what you're saying, and you say, oh, the Hada Yahud or something like that, they know exactly what you're talking about. It's the same word, right? You're not gonna end up, fooling anybody. Okay. So the name Yahudi was known as the people that are from this nation, right? So all the people are from Israel, these two kingdoms, after this, we just name Yahudis. We're named Jews. Okay. So, and then it got stuck with them, and it just lasted. Whether they were from the descendants of Yahutha, or the son of Yahutha or not, they just got the name Jews. Okay. And that's pretty much a prominent name that we use today.
So who conquered who?
Yeah, it's like really, really far away from where we're at right now. This kingdom of Israel was conquered, and I have it in my notes, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm forgetting who conquered them. And then this kingdom of Judah Ibn Khanizar, who was the leader of Babylon, came and destroyed them, and then they went and they got took into as prisoners and brought over to Babylon, which is like present day Iraq, and put into slavery. And they were once again in exile from their land. Okay, we're gonna get to that now. That's a little bit hitch. I kind of jumped ahead, but we'll get to that if you will. So these are the names that we have, the three main ones that are the only two are used in the Quran, Bani Isra'il and the word Yahud, right? Those only one that's really mentioned in the Quran. Hebrews is something that was mentioned a lot earlier because there were people that moved around. It's mentioned that after they stopped moving around and settled in one area and made a civilization, the word Hebrew was never really used again. Okay, we still know it today just as a language, the Hebrew language. Okay, so they're really not used after that once they were able to settle and they're not moving and crossing rivers anymore. A lot of information, but hopefully you're still hanging in there, inshallah ta'ala. All right, so raise your hand if you get a little lost. Let's start with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Some of you guys know the history. We just kind of warm ourselves up here a little bit. Ibrahim alayhi salam was from this place called Ur, which is in present day Iraq. A lot of you know the story. Threw him into fire. You know, his dad had issues with him. He was preaching one God. And then he journeyed to this area called Haran, which is in modern day Turkey. And then finally makes it down to Palestine, Jerusalem area, Hebron, Al-Khalil. The Arabs call that area Al-Khalil because Ibrahim was named the word Khalilullah. And supposedly he's buried in that same city. And so he goes up into there. We know that he had two sons. It took a very long time for him to finally be granted two sons. One is Ismail alayhi salam. Of course, that's where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes from. And that nation will be down here in Mecca and they will prosper. And it's pretty much who we are right now. Okay. And then his other son, Ishaq, has a son named Yaqub. The Jews believe that Yaqub was a twin of another son. His name was Esau. It's not mentioned in the Quran, so I'm not going to mention it. We're not going to it very much, but just understand that they believe that he was a twin of these. He had a twin, if you will. Okay, so Ishaq has a son called Yaqub. Okay, from Yaqub alayhi salam, he has 4 different wives or 4 different partners, if you will. Okay, and from this, where we have the 12 sons of, or the 12 tribes of Israel, of Yaqub, where they come from. These names are all taken from the Bible. You won't find it in the Quran. You won't find it in Hadith. Okay, so I'm just kind of putting it out there, at least so we could follow. We have no really argument against these names. We really don't mind what the names are, but just for historical purposes, we're using it here. He had a wife named Leah, and then from her we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sons that have come from them. Okay, Judah, Yahutha, is one of them there. That's the nation that stays on, if you will. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier. Okay. There's all these different names: Reuben, Simon, Simon, and so forth. It's mentioned that he had a daughter. That's in their books. I don't think we have anything. I mentioned that in the Quran that he had one daughter. Then there's a servant of Leah, and they have 2 more sons. Then there is a servant. There's another wife called Rachel, and that's where Yusuf alayhi salam comes from. Okay, whether her name was Rachel or not really doesn't really matter. Right, it's not mentioned in the Quran. And only 2 children are from there. That is Yusuf alayhi salam and Binyamin, or Benjamin. And these are why, and these, if we go to Surah Yusuf, as we know very much, that these brothers all kind of were jealous of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? For multiple reasons. We're going to get into that in a little bit. So you have all these sons here. These are what we call the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 12 tribes of Yaqub alayhi salam. Except the girl. The girl doesn't have a tribe. Usually it's the men that start the tribes, if you will, are named after it. We can argue about that later on, right? So these are the 12 sons. And the numbers there is in the order they came in. So Yusuf alayhi salam is way at, right? And his brother Binyamin comes after him. Usually, people kind of kid around that the youngest one is a baby of the family and they get favored a little bit more. Well, that's what kind of these other brothers kind of felt, if you will, right? We don't say that Yaqub alayhi salam favored Yusuf alayhi salam more. Children in general kind of just, are jealous of their own siblings. That's kind of natural, right? But anyhow, this is these are what end up going to be the descendants or Bani Isra'il. Okay, from each one of these individuals comes children, grandchildren, until you have a clan and you have a tribe. Okay. Let's start with Yusuf alayhi salam. A lot of us know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam was over here with Yaqub alayhi salam, his father, and his 11 other brothers that he had, other than his sister that's mentioned there. And he ends up making a way over to Egypt. I'm going to really rush through his story because we could spend the next 4 weeks just talking about him. So Yusuf alayhi salam, we know very well that he had a dream, mentioned in the Bible also, that he had 11 stars, the sun and the moon prostrating to him, which is a sign that he's going to most likely be another prophet.
How does he know if the sun, the moon, and the stars are prostrating to them because they don't have a body, legs, or...
Yeah, that's true. That's a good question, right? So I don't know if they came like in a cartoon character or what, but whether they were making a motion, I don't know how a sun would make a prostrating kind of move, right? But he understood that they were prostrating to him, right? And then, of course, he goes to his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, who's a prophet, and verifies it. So he's really more the stamp of approval on that one. Okay, good question. Very good. And then his brothers threw him in a well. Some caravan came, took him out of the well, puts him to Egypt, and then he becomes a servant in the palace. And then he gets defamed and gets wrongly accused of trying to seduce one of the wives of the ministers in the palace. And then he goes into jail for X amount of years. And then he finally comes out of that jail cell by helping to interpret the dream of the king of Egypt at that time. Okay, wasn't a pharaoh yet; it was still called a king. And he liked him. Say, you know what? I'll take you out, and I'll make you in charge of the khazan, of the rations of the state, of the empire, the corn, the wheat, and make sure you take care of them. He had the dream of how to take care of those, so he's the best person for it. While he's in there, his brothers come from Palestine because there's a famine going on, and they're looking for food. So they go to Egypt. They heard Egypt has food. So they go there. They meet Yusuf alayhi salam. They don't perceive him. Okay. Some said it was 60 years later on, 80 years later on, one of these two numbers. So people are definitely going to change looks and shape by that time. And Yusuf alayhi salam noticed that it's my brothers. Long story short, his dad and the rest of the brothers go into Egypt, and that's where they leave this area where they were originally from. Okay, that's where Yaqub alayhi salam and Ishaq were really from. If you want to go up the line to Ibrahim, he wasn't originally from Palestine. We all know where he was from already, the Iraq area, or that we mentioned, right? But he migrated here, and so their original area, their original land that they were from, Yaqub alayhi salam and his sons, was the lands of Palestine. Okay, but since he got over here, he got sent over here because of enslaved and the story I just mentioned. He brings all his whole family over because there's much more wealth over here. They have food. He's living in a palace, right? And so that's how Bani Isra'il gets over into Egypt. Okay, that's how they are now in that area from the original area where they were beforehand. Okay, some historians of the opinion that Yaqub alayhi salam and the family migrated in the 19th century BC. So these are 1900 years or 1800 years before Jesus, peace be upon him, is born. We're talking very long time ago. Especially if you want to look into books and history about this time, you can see it's very sketchy. You don't know exactly, there's not a lot of documentation. And if there is, it could be a bit questionable. Okay. At the time, there was this dynasty called the Hyksos dynasty that was ruling Egypt at that time. Okay, so this dynasty, they like Yusuf alayhi salam because they interpret the dreams. And when his family came over, like, oh, this is your family, we will honor your family. Remember, he's not Egyptian though. So there's a little bit of a race issue there. But since he can interpret the dreams, you're a good guy. And so take your 11 brothers and your mom and your dad, and we'll give you this land in, we call modern day Egypt, and you can live there. They said, hey, there's fruits and there's vegetables and everything here, much more better living condition. And so they stayed there, if you will. Okay. That empire finally falls. And then the empire we know as the pharaohs, if you will, the pharaohs, enter into it and takes over this empire. And they're the ones that will end up enslaving the children of Israel, Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers. It could be that Yusuf alayhi salam was even alive at that time, the descendants, if you will. Remember, they're a different ethnicity. So they know that these people are a little bit different. Okay, who are these individuals? But they found out, you know what, we could use them for work. Okay, so the pharaohs that came in decided, you know what, we're going to enslave them. What's really interesting, though, even from the Quran and even from the Bible, from Yusuf alayhi salam to when Musa alayhi salam shows up on the scene, where some say it's around 400 to 500 year gap, there's really nothing about what happened to Bani Isra'il at that time, other than being enslaved. Okay, so which prophet came to them? Did they have multiple prophets? What happened? Right. One thing I know that they didn't have freedom. They were enslaved. They were whipped. They're made to work, and build the empire and so forth, do all the, the labor, if you will, and they were put there. History jumps straight over to Musa alayhi salam. Okay, so what happened between those years? Allahu Alam, exactly what's going on. Definitely know that this empire fell and the Pharaonic empire came in, Ramses number 1, 2, 3, and all these different Ramseses, if you will.
But what is interesting, this Brother John, what is interesting here, the way I at least see it, is that during those 400 or 500 years, of which we probably don't know exactly how many years was enslaved time and free time, but even during those hundreds of years of enslavement, they basically kept their religion, which at that time, they were believers in Tawhid, they were believers in Allah. They were basically Muslims at that time.
Great question. So here, so they were enslaved. I'm going to retract really quick, and I'm going to get to your point, Brother Johan, is that they were enslaved. There's a difference of opinion if they're enslaved. In the Bible, it says 430 years, okay, which is a very long time. And historically, it doesn't make sense that they were enslaved for 430 years. So a lot of scholars say we're around 210. Nonetheless, that's a lot of time to be enslaved. It's mentioned at that time that they were forced to worship Pharaoh as their Lord, or else you'd be killed. Obviously, that's why slavery was kind of, that's what they usually do to slaves, right? Even here in America, right? They were forced to turn to Christianity, right? And so they were forced to worship, whether they wholeheartedly wanted to do it or let's just do it so we don't get beat and don't get killed. What's understood that they were worshiping, maybe not all of them. Maybe they're doing it as a front, if you will, not totally wholeheartedly believing in it, but taking Pharaoh as their Lord. Okay, whether they participated in acts of worship, like I said, there's not much documentation there that we have. Even when Musa alayhi salam shows up on the scene, it doesn't really mention. This is more to the point that you're kind of making here, is that they're not worshiping Pharaoh, they're not prostrating out to him. They're not taking other idols that they have and taking it as gods, right? But at least they have to kind of, admit that he is the Lord of the land, if you will. Okay. So yeah, it could be that they were worshiping in between. What's kind of mentioned in the Bible that they had to kind of be retaught who God is, because it was so long since a prophet came to them. Musa alayhi salam was understood was the first prophet back from them, Allahu Alam. So they had to kind of, who is God? Why did God create us? When was the earth made, and so forth? And in 6 days, and they have to be retaught this as slaves, or maybe weren't educated or so forth. So that's a good point. Whether they were truly believing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, or they lost a lot of that and they had to be retaught that almost seems what the situation was, that they had to be retaught. Musa alayhi salam comes on the scene around 13. So we went to 1800 to around 1200. So that's like 500, 600 years now. Okay. When Musa alayhi salam comes, as he's born, a lot of us know the story that the Pharaoh at that time was killing all the male children. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the mother of Musa alayhi salam, and we bestowed the favor on you on another time, that when we received your mother, what to be revealed, that is, put Musa alayhi salam in the chest, and then cast it into the river, the Nile River. Then let the river throw it by the shore, and it will be picked up by the one who's an enemy to me, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and an enemy to him, to Musa. And I have cast love on you and myself, so you might be favored all, and that you might be brought up under my eye. So, zooming forward now, Musa alayhi salam is born when the Pharaoh, it's understood that he had a dream that he saw a fire coming from Jerusalem, from Palestine, and burning the houses of all the Egyptians in his empire, except Bani Isra'il, except the children of Israel. And that a man from Bani Israel is going to come and take your kingdom, right? The story actually plays out a lot in history in different other individuals, right? But so what does he do? What does a maniac do? Go ahead.
That maniac goes and says, every year, all the boys born will be killed.
Very good, right? So it's kind of mentioned. So he's going to kill all that's the easiest thing. Keep yourself alive. Just kill all their men, or their boys. It really doesn't bother him too much.
Also, the most cruel way.
Very, very much very cruel way. That's very true. But what's the issue with killing all the males all the time? What do you guys think? Sorry? Anyone? Go, why don't you go? Go ahead. You want?
Okay, it was like, yeah, the population will decline. Yeah, how do you keep the population going?
Population will decline. What else?
What will happen? The other side of the world will also go away because men cannot live without women and women cannot live without men.
Seriously? Wow. When you get married, make sure you mention that, inshallah ta'ala.
Yeah. Hey, this kid is smarter than like a lot of the liberals. I'm being serious.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's good. Good. One is that his workforce is going to go down. So you have to think about money here, right? So if I don't have men there, and women not necessarily did all the laborious work, maybe like other things, right? So if I don't have men to do and build things for me, then guess what? My nation's going to go down. So what's understood is mentioned in the books of tafsir. He said, all right, make a concession that every other year I will kill all the boys. Okay, so that's why his older brother, Harun alayhi salam, Aaron, stayed alive because he was born in the year before, or could be the other years, if you will. And Musa alayhi salam was born a year when they were killing all the baby boys. Okay, and so he was told, as mentioned here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told his mother, put him in a chest, send him down the river. Lo and behold, out of all the houses in the world that he could go wash up on the shore of, is the palace of Pharaoh. Okay. Long story short, the wife picks up the baby. The wife's name is Asiya, alayhi salam, tells Pharaoh, let's just keep him. Maybe he might be a blessing for us. She couldn't have children herself. And so he was a little bit soft to his wife. I guess he can be a little soft sometimes, and kept that little baby. Okay. And Musa alayhi salam grows up in the house of Pharaoh. So imagine that. So now Allah mentioned in the Quran that this was a very big trial for Bani Isra'il to have all their male children. If you picture that, right now what's going on in Palestine, you don't really want to even give them look at the other side and try to have any remorse of what's going on with our brothers and sisters in Gaza, right? But we're talking about this history here. We go back. If you were there, that's a really cruel thing to see, that every male child is going to be taken away and being killed. We zoom forward. Musa alayhi salam grows up. Okay. There's an incident where he ends up killing a person. It's also mentioned in the Bible. And he knows that he's not going to get a righteous, fair judgment for what happened. It was an accident. He didn't feel like he was going to try to kill that person, but ended up punching a person, an Egyptian, and ended up killing him. He flees to the lands of Midian, Sinai Peninsula area, ends up coming back to Egypt. So I'm skipping all that because it really has nothing to do with Bani Isra'il themselves, okay? Until he gets a sign that he's going to be the next prophet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Taha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, go you and your brother Harun, so you have to go find your brother Harun now, he's not with him, with my signs, and do not be slack in my remembrance. So speak to him, Pharaoh, in soft words, that he may accept advice and fear Allah. They said, oh, our Lord, we fear that he might be hasten against us, or will become rebellious against us. Musa alayhi salam is quite concerned. He doesn't want to go up to meet Pharaoh. I wouldn't want to do it either. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not be afraid, for I'm going to be with both of you, and I hear and I see. So come to him and say, we are messengers of your Lord. What's the main thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants with Bani Isra'il? What? Allah says, so tell Pharaoh, let the children of Israel go. We just want them. Okay? This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. We don't want anything else. We don't want them to do anything. We just want them and take them out of the slavery and bring them back to where they used to be, where Yaqub alayhi salam was originally in the lands of Palestine. So he said, right, just tell them that we want the children of Israel to go and do not persecute them. Leave them alone. You have your own people, etc. So we have come to you with the signs from your Lord, and peace be upon those who follow the guidance. Okay. So this is Musa alayhi salam. He's not there to bring down the Egyptian empire. He's not there to start a new empire. It's not, we're going to fight you if you don't give me this. My thing is, these people here, they're enslaved. Just give it to them to me. I'm just going to take them somewhere else. Okay. That is, so as you see the clear intent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from right here is that they're supposed to be in some other place. They're supposed to be in some other land living. Okay. They're not supposed to be here. Just let them go. That's what the message is. So that is Musa alayhi salam's main job there. What happens after that, when it goes and he meets Pharaoh, the leaders of Pharaoh says, the enmity amongst the people of Pharaoh said, will you leave Musa alayhi salam and his people to cause corruption in the land and abandon you and your gods? Right? He made Pharaoh look like a fool when he threw down his staff and turned into a real snake, right? So the people say, you can't have him there because people are going to start believing in him. He has a hand that turns white. He has a staff that turns into a snake, right? Pharaoh says, we will kill their sons. Now we're going to kill all their sons now. We're going to step it up a little bit more and keep their women alive. This even becomes more tyrannical. And indeed, we are subjugators over them. Musa alayhi salam says, people, here's what the what Pharaoh's going to say, seek help with Allah. Remember, they didn't have a prophet for a while. So seeking help with Allah maybe is a thing they not totally understand. And be patient. Indeed, the earth belongs to Allah. Basically, Allah is going to give you a place to go. He causes you to inherit in whom he wills of his servants. The best outcome is for those who are righteous. So there's a condition here. You have to be righteous. Okay. They said, we have been harmed before you came and after you have came to us. Okay. So you can see the mannerism they're having with Musa alayhi salam. Imagine if the Sahaba talked to the Prophet something like that, right? Why don't you go and come over here? Why don't you come and pray? Why don't you do this? Like, we're having hardship before you came, after you came, right? Like, no, you don't find that in the Sirah. You don't really find the Sahaba talking to the Prophet something like that. They're talking to Musa alayhi salam. They're not really used to prophets. Nonetheless, not necessarily an excuse, but they're talking. They know he's a prophet, but look at how they talk back to him. And perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemies. Like, don't worry, Allah will destroy your enemy, grant you succession in the land, and see you will do. Okay. So it's mentioned that Fir'aun would make them work half the day and they'll have the other half the day off. But when Musa alayhi salam came and made him look like a fool in front of everybody with the staff and making his magicians end up becoming Muslim, right, and became prostrating, that Fir'aun says, you guys are going to work the whole entire day with no food and no drink. So now they're getting a little bit more like, feel like it's a worst case that when Musa alayhi salam wasn't here, we're doing better. Now that he comes, we're getting worse. Okay. We saw that with the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca. When the Sahaba became Muslim, their life got better. Did they riches come from the sky? They got persecuted, right? Families cut them off, right? Some of them had to migrate to another land. But they understand that this is belief, that this is better, right? It's a different ideology between the Sahaba and what the Bani Isra'il is talking to Musa alayhi salam about. Okay. So they continue to enslave them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Araf and Surah Yunus here. And we certainly sees the people of Pharaoh with years of famine and deficiency in their fruits, right? So they couldn't get produce. That perhaps they would be reminded. Take this as a sign. But when good came to them, they said, this is about our right. And if bad omens came and struck them, they saw evil in Musa. That this is from you, Musa. This is why we're having this issue. Okay, so you have to do some bad PR to make those people, to make him look bad. Unquestionably, their fortune is with Allah. The Muslims do not know. So we sent upon them a flood. The Nile River will flood over into their houses, into their lands. Okay, locusts, jarar, which is like big grasshoppers. Even today, they still have locusts that come seasons in Egypt. I used to live in Egypt for a while, and it's like a black cloud coming over the city, and they'll just start landing everywhere. And it's I've never seen that before. I don't know what to do. But Egyptians, what they do, they'll burn tires to get black smoke in the skies to try to warn them away. But this was a punishment that these locusts were. Remember, they didn't have sealed windows in their houses. You know what I mean? So they came all into their houses, their food, their clothes. I don't know about you. I can't even take ants. So this was a punishment that they had.
Aren't grasshoppers practically, aren't they just like
No, so these are locusts. They different than a grasshopper. They're much bigger, right? And they eat a lot. They could eat your whole field out in hours, if you will. So you could have crops and it'll be all gone if they come, right? And obviously you don't want them on you or in your clothes or anything like that. Right? Yeah, there you go. Very good. So it becomes of an issue. Lice. When what lice is in your hair, it's all in your hair and so forth. Frogs, right? Frogs, I guess I know, slimy creatures. I don't know, people don't like them. So imagine all over in people's houses once again. Blood, that the Nile River turned into blood. I don't know about you. If I would have saw that, then I would have given up right now and said, you know what? I think he is God. I'd rather just follow him, okay? So it's mentioned that all these signs came, and they were arrogant, and they were criminal people. We revealed to Musa and his brother, have the houses of your people in Egypt and make your houses worship-oriented, establish Salah, give glad tidings to the believers. So it's tell them, like, work on them, make them learn how to worship, that they're not worshiping Fir'aun. Okay. So there was mentioned in the Quran, Surah Isra, that there was 9 signs that were sent down to Fir'aun. One was a staff that turned into a stake, hand that from his armpit he'll pull it out and it would turn white and shining. Years of drought and famine, parting of the sea. You haven't got to there yet. Flood, locust, lice, frogs, blood. Some kind of different exactly what these 9 signs are. Why do I bring this up for? Because if you were part of Bani Isra'il at that time, forget about what's going on to Fir'aun, and you would see this, how would your iman go up? Would you become a much stronger believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Probably.
You would be amazing, thank you. Right? And you would think that, wow, like our God is helping us, right? You would say, like, you know, I'm going to listen to whatever Musa has to say. Because this is true that's happening here. We haven't seen this for another 400 or 200 years, right? This is a great sign. You would think this would be the reply of them. There's a reason why I'm stressing this. Because all of this is going to play a big factor what's going to happen in our next 2 or 3 classes, okay? What Musa has to deal with these individuals that saw all these signs, that they know for true that there's a God. They know that they're being helped. They know they have blessings. They know they're being favored. And what do they do in response to that? Okay, it's going to play into whether they're promised or not. Okay, so they have all these things that are going on. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after that, promises them, or they witness the false promises that Fir'aun makes. He sees all these signs. And when the punishment descended upon them, they said, "Oh Musa, invoke for us your Lord." So Fir'aun's telling them, you ask your Lord by what he has promised you. If you can remove this punishment, we will surely believe you. Like if you take away this blood, you take away the frog, you take away the lice, we will believe in your Lord. Okay, that's what he's saying to his people. Okay, and we will send the children of Israel. Please take them and give them away. Every time that sign happened, Fir'aun says, "No, I was just kidding. I lied to you." And so, if you were Bani Isra'il at that time, you heard that this was it. We're about to get freed if the lice goes away, if the frogs go away, if the blood goes away. But every time, he would persecute them more. He would lie to them. And so for them, they're seeing it's a very dim situation. Okay? But nonetheless, we've seen the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end, the Exodus, which is one of the books of the Torah, name of it, when they escape from Egypt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally says, because they're not looking at the signs. Bani Isra'il, their main job is not to fight Fir'aun, is not to overthrow the government, not to have a coup, is just to get out of the land. Remember, I want you guys all to understand that. Okay. So we revealed to Musa alayhi salam saying, send out with my servants at night and make for them a dry path of the sea. Right? They won't have no mud on the ground, you won't get stuck in it. You'll walk on dry ground and go through the sea. Okay. Strike with your staff, neither fearing to be caught or having any fear. So Musa alayhi salam knows very well that when he gets to the sea, it's going to open. And Israel maybe doesn't know that. Okay, so it's not a surprise to Musa alayhi salam. He's being told right here what the game plan is. Then Fir'aun chased them with his troops. So they were encircled by that huge wave, and the sea overwhelmed them. Pharaoh held his people astray, and they did not show them the right path. And when the two hosts saw each other, the companions of Musa alayhi salam said, surely we are overtaken. Right? They saw the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're cornered in front of the sea, and the army of Pharaoh's coming. They're saying, we're going to die. All right, Musa alayhi salam, you put us in a trap. You don't have no way to get out. Okay? He said, never indeed with me is my Lord, and he will guide me. Okay? With my Lord, and he will guide me. And so we know that he opened up the sea, they were able to go through there, and then Pharaoh came and he was drowned. And we cause the people who have been oppressed to inherit the eastern regions of the land and the western regions. So when Bani Israel got through that water passage, it's understood the Sinai Peninsula area now that they're in, okay? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? We cause those people, Bani Israel, who has been oppressed to inherit the eastern regions of the land and the western regions, which we have blessed. And the good word of your Lord was fulfilled for the children of Israel because of what they have patiently endured by being enslaved. We destroyed all that Pharaoh and his people were producing and what they have been building. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hey, I know you guys were enslaved for a long time. I saved you now. You're now going to inherit this land, east and the west. So most of the people in the books of the Tafsir mentions it's a land of Sham, which is Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon area, if you will. And this is east and west, right? So, and also Egypt, which is, could say the Sinai Peninsula. I know, don't think about Egypt, the modern day Egypt with the borders right now, but the Sinai Peninsula, which is kind of part of modern day Egypt, if you will. So this whole area will be yours. Okay? In the Bible,
Brother John, sorry. I thought the east and west means both sides of the river Jordan.
So that's in the Bible. I'm just going to say that. So they talk about the Euphrates and the River Jordan, and some interpret it to mean the Nile. So these are different passages in the Bible, and some say between those two rivers. Jordan River and the Nile River is one section, and then you can use the Euphrates to the Nile, or the Euphrates to the Jordan River. All that area, different opinions that was for them, if you will. Okay. So Allah blessed in the lands, produce. We know the lands of Palestine, they call the Fertile Crescent for a reason. Okay, you could grow a lot of things, olives, fruits, vegetables, etc. It's mentioned in the Bible. Ibn Kathir mentions in his tafsir, he takes a lot from the narrations of, it's in the people of the book, that 600,000 people passed through that, of Bani Israel was alive at that time. Okay. In the Bible, it says 600,000 men. That's not counting women and children. Some people said if every man has, one wife and 2 children or something like that, it's like 1.2 million people. Okay. That's a lot of people to cross a river, ocean, or to pass that. I would assume that would take more than an hour or so. That's a lot of people to get through. Okay, so it wasn't that Musa alayhi salam was dealing with like, I got 40 people here, guys, this is what we're gonna do, right? He's dealing with a massive amount of people, and he's one person. Yes, he has his brother Harun alayhi salam that's there. Okay, and so he has this large group of people, and now they're in the lands of the Sinai Peninsula, and this is where we're gonna pick up from next week. And now they have freedom. No one's oppressing them, right? No one's doing nothing to them. They have Musa alayhi salam as their own leader from their own people. So there's no argument that you're from a different tribe or anything like that. What are they going to do? What's going to happen to them in this period? And so that's where we'll start next week and talk about the golden calf and how they got the Torah and the scriptures and what they did from there. Okay. Questions or comments?
No, I think just 2 things here. Oh. I think next week we don't have a class, right?
Yes, I totally forgot. This is a fishing trip. I totally forgot myself.
And then
not extra.
Secondly, is there a recording? Because a brother that went to Hajj with me, he wanted also to join, but he had no time today due to his work schedule. So is there a recording?
This class is recorded on YouTube. There'll be no class next week. And we'll continue the week after. I forgot the fishing trip next week. I don't know if any of you guys are going, but I should have started that. When I started the class, I forgot they had this fishing trip, so I apologize for that. So 2 weeks from now, we'll continue. So you could digest for 2 weeks, inshallah. You could do some homework and so forth. What was your question, sorry?
Yeah, so almost one of y'all said that these areas are the worst school and live there. Is that what the current belief is that Egypt, do they believe now?
There's some ideas that from the Nile to the Euphrates is their land. That is what they're being granted for, and they have right to it, and that's their promised land too. Jordan. Yeah, that from the 2 rivers. There's also difference of opinion from the sea to the Jordan to the Euphrates. So, which is it saves the Sinai Peninsula and so forth. But that area is given to them. So that's another opinion out there. They have different opinions of exactly what their land is. Yeah, so that's kind of what the modern day issue is right now with Zionism. Question? Anyone else with questions or comments? Yeah.
How is that such a big deal?
If you put your hand on your armpit and you pulled out and it was all white, that would be pretty amazing.
How is it like a punishment?
No, it wasn't a punishment, it was a sign. What was big for Pharaoh at that time was magic, illusions, right? So when Musa alayhi salam came, Allah always gives his prophets something to combat what's known at that time to be spectacular and amazing. The Prophet was given the Quran, which kind of, was a challenge to poetry. Okay, so Musa alayhi salam, they had magicians. I'll do, illusions and so forth. And so when they were able to pull his hand out white like that, people were like, "How did that happen? You're not an ordinary person. You must be a prophet." At least that was a point of it. Not everyone believed in it, right? And the staff turned into a real snake, right? So that's where the point of it was. Good question.
What was it? I've never read it anywhere, but what is the name of Musa original biological one?
Oh, interesting. Quran does not mention it. I'll have to go look up in the Bible if it's mentioned. I believe it is mentioned there. I'm not too sure. Anything else, anyone? So once again, we'll have the next class 2 weeks from now, Sunday, 11 o'clock, inshallah ta'ala. Then we'll make dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذو الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to bless our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Palestine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, free their lands of their oppressors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, build back their homes better than they had before. Give them family members more than they had before. Ya Kareem Ya Rabbil Alameen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to accept this class we are doing right now to learn what you have mentioned in the Quran, increase our iman and our taqwa. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put in our scale of hasanat on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.